witch's will. The rhythmic clatter of the train's wheels had lulled Nadia into a state of weary contemplation. For the first time in years, she was returning to the village of her youth, a place she had fled with the eager haste of a fledgling bird. The occasion was somber, the funeral of her auntie, the only family she had left. As the train pulled into the station, the air grew thick with the scent of fading summer and the damp earth of the approaching rosemary woods. A long palisade with climbing plants met her, a crimson building with a chimney rising behind it, the old brick factory where her auntie lived. A tender breeze, carrying the scent of meadow grass and wildflowers, cooled her skin as she descended the hill toward the house. A sense of foreboding settled over her as she approached the front door. On the threshold, a line of white powder, so starkly white it seemed to glow in the twilight, had been swept into a neat pile. Nadia's heart sank. She knew this was not a harmless superstition. Hastily, she stepped over the salt and pushed open the heavy oak door. The air inside was still and heavy, smelling of old wood and dried herbs. The windows were draped with thick curtains, and the fading sunlight filtered through them in an olive-green haze. In the center of the room, a simple wooden coffin stood open, its lid propped against the wall. A figure lay shrouded beneath a dark veil. Just as she was about to approach the coffin, a soft knock echoed from the hallway. Nadia's heart leaped. She opened the door to find Baba Nyura, her auntie's elderly neighbor, her face etched with a mixture of fear and pity. "May you come outside, please? I have to tell you something." Nadia stepped out into the deepening dusk. Baba Nyura, her voice a low, urgent whisper, explained that Nadia's auntie had been ill for a long time and had made her promise to deliver a final message. "She wanted you to make the right," Baba Nyura said, her eyes wide with concern. "But you don't have to follow. I don't actually want you to stay in this house. Come and stay with me tonight." Nadia, her mind clouded with a mix of grief and indignation, refused. "No, I have to. It's my duty." Baba Nyura's face darkened, and she lowered her head. "Then you'll find the chants you have to read at the bedside table. Adieu," she said, her voice barely audible, before turning and retreating into the shadows. Nadia sighed, her thoughts consumed by her poor, misunderstood auntie. The night had fully descended, and the sounds of crickets filled the village air. She turned on the overhead light and saw a letter on the bedside table, addressed to Nadia. The letter, written in her auntie's familiar, spidery script, was a strange and bewildering testament. "Dear niece, I always wanted to be closer. Alas, it was hard to be nicer to you while I was alive. If you read this letter, it means I am dead already. Don't feel pity, since I have to tell you something. I took part in a peculiar community. We were explorers of an ancient tradition in a modern form. I don't need a monument on my grave. All I want is for you to make a small and simple rite." The letter went on to detail the ritual. She was to take a sack from a chest, use her left hand to take some of the earth within it, and place it at the threshold. She was to remain in the hall, opening a window sash slightly, until dawn. Nadia, though bewildered by the absurdity of it all, felt a strange compulsion to honor her auntie's final wish. She found the sack in a wooden chest, its contents a fine, dark soil. She swept away the salt from the threshold with her foot and, with her left hand, placed the earth from the sack in its place. The ritual felt foolish, a relic of a bygone era, yet she followed it meticulously. She then settled into a chair near the coffin, the long night stretching out before her. She found herself drifting into a fitful, unsettling sleep, dreaming of being buried, of being trapped in a small, dark space, unable to move. The clock struck 3, and Nadia's eyes snapped open. She was paralyzed, a cold sweat beading on her forehead. She tried to move, to scream, but her limbs were heavy, unresponsive. A strange, muffled sound reached her ears. She tried to open her eyes, but they were covered in a thick, dark substance. She felt a faint, flabby sensation on her cheek as she managed to touch it with her right hand. A faint noise escaped her lips as she tried to cry out in horror, but she could not find the air to breathe. She was not in a coffin, but something was terribly wrong. The paralysis lifted as suddenly as it had descended. Nadia's eyes, now clear, open to a world of absolute darkness. She was no longer in the chair. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and something else, something sweet and cloying. Her body felt heavy, her limbs stiff and unresponsive. Panic seized her as she realized she was lying down, confined in a space barely larger than herself. The muffled sound she had heard was the sound of earth being shoveled onto a wooden lid above her head. She was in a coffin, and she was being buried alive. The first rays of dawn, pale and weak, finally pierced the gloom, casting long, skeletal shadows across the floorboards. The heavy oak door creaked open, and Baba Nura, her face a tapestry of worry, stepped inside. "Nadia? Are you there, child?" she called out, her voice echoing in the still air. She held a small, woven basket in her hand, filled with freshly baked bread and a flask of hot tea. She stopped abruptly, the basket slipping from her grasp and clattering to the floor. There, standing tall and straight by the coffin, was Nadia. But it wasn't Nadia. A strange, knowing smile played on the young woman's lips, a cruel and ancient glint in her eyes. Baba Nura, recoiling in terror, stumbled backward. Her foot caught on the edge of the coffin stand, and she fell with a sickening crack. A sharp, searing pain shot up her leg. The figure in Nadia's body laughed, a low, raspy sound that was not Nadia's at all. She stepped over the fallen woman, her movements graceful and unhurried. "I told you not to stay," Baba Nura whispered, her voice trembling with pain and fear. The figure knelt down, her face close to Baba Nura's. "I always come back," she said, her voice a familiar ancient echo. "This time, I just brought a new house with me." The village gathered for the funeral, a somber procession to the small cemetery on the hill. The figure in Nadia's body stood among them, a black veil covering her face, her hands clasped in front of her. She watched as the simple wooden coffin was lowered into the earth, a final resting place for the body of her old self. She felt a strange sense of triumph, a quiet victory. The curse that had followed her throughout her life, the one that had separated her from her loved ones and her happiness, was not a curse at all. It was a destiny. And now, thanks to her niece, she had a new one. The will of the witch had been fulfilled.